Peace, peace, people. It's the real resurrected back at you. Y'all know I gotta step away from the internet every now and then to catch a breather of fresh air. Cause we got this motherfucking white coon running around trying to be Christ. And he ain't nowhere near that. You can't even control this country. How you gonna control the world? Don't you know the energy of Christ is a world commanding energy? You can't even hold down what you got going on, the little speck of responsibility or accountability that is endowed to you. You can't even hold that down. So how you gonna be Christ? Anyway, I digress, y'all. I ain't gonna even get into that. Today is a very special message, a message that entails an energy of stopping the violence worldwide. The name of this message is Stop the Violence, a message to the world. Let's get started. To every child who has learned to duck before they learn to read, to every mother or father who has buried a son or a daughter and still had to show up for work the next morning, to every elder that's watched the same cycle spin across decades, wearing different masks but bearing the same teeth. This is for you. Yeah, this is for you. This is with you as well. We do not lack for data. We lack for witnesses willing to name what the data reveals. The violence of the bullet is only the final punctuation in a sentence written by policy, poverty, and manufactured despair. Before the trigger is pulled, 1,000 silent voices have already occurred. The school that was underfunded, the job that was denied, the neighborhood that was redlined into a cage, the body that was policed until it became a powder keg of grief and adrenaline. We have been taught to fear the stranger in the alley while the corporations poison the water. We have been conditioned to mourn the broken window while the broken spirit goes unmended, unfixed. We have been trained to call violence only what disrupts order, while the slow grinding violence of extraction, exclusion, and erasure is renamed economics, tradition, or national security. This is the lie we must unlearn. Violence is not merely the act of harm, it is also the withholding of healing. When a society has enough food but lets children go hungry, that is violence. When a nation has enough housing but lets families freeze on the sidewalks, that is violence. When a people have enough medicine but price it beyond reach, that is violence. When a history is whitewashed so that the descendants of the wounded never learn the architecture of their own wounds, that is violence against memory itself. And memory is the root of identity. We must stop the violence, people. White, black, green, glow in the dark, whatever color you make. We must stop all of the violence, all of it, interpersonal and the structural, the visible and the invisible, the sudden and the slow violence. But let us be clear. Stopping violence does not mean accepting oppression quietly. There is a difference between peace and pacification. There is a difference between harmony and sedation. The demand to stop the violence cannot be weaponized to demand that the oppressed stop resisting. Resistance to violence is not violence, sorry. It is the immune system of a dying world trying to save itself. What then is the path? Truth first, not the comfortable truth that lets us sleep, not the truth social that Cankle's McCankle face airs on his platform, but the surgical truth that cuts where infection lives. We must tell the truth about what was stolen, who was stolen, and how the stealing continues in algorithms and contracts and courtrooms. Truth is not cruelty. It is the only antibiotic for historical amnesia. Reparation next. Not charity, not pity, not performative gestures, but the material restoration of what was extracted, stolen, you know, land, labor, language, lineage. Reparations is not a gift. It is the return of what was never rightfully taken. It is the structural acknowledgement that harm happened, that harm continues, and that harm can be interrupted. Healing is always first, and healing is not a metaphor. It is the daily practice of tending to the nervous systems, the relationships, the soils, and the waters that have been poisoned by stress and scarcity. Healing requires time that capitalism refuses to give. It requires space that gentrification refuses to leave. It requires resources that hoarding refuses to share. We must build sanctuaries, physical, economic, and spiritual, where the broken can reassemble themselves into wholeness. Accountability without vengeance. The goal is not to become the mirror of the harm we have suffered. The goal is to transform the conditions that produced the harm. This means consequences for those who wield power cruelly. Yeah, consequences for those who abuse this power as well. Yes, but consequences aimed at restoration, not destruction. The prison industrial complex has proven that cages do not cure cruelty. They merely relocate it. We must be brave enough to imagine justice that actually makes things just. Solidarity across the borders, solidarity across the artificial borders. The same forces that devalue Black life in America devalue Palestinian life, indigenous life, migrant life, poor life, disabled life, queer life, female life, trans life, and the life of the earth itself. These are not separate struggles. They are fingers of the same fist. When we learn to see our liberation as bound together, we become ungovernable by division. To the young ones, your rage is valid. It is a compass point pointing toward injustice. But do not let them turn your rage into a weapon against your own community. Channel it, study it, let it fuel the work of building what they said could not be built. To the elders, your wisdom is needed, not as a museum piece, but as a living map. Show us how you survived the unsurvivable. Show us where you hid the keys to resilience. To the healers, keep tending. Your work is not invisible. You are the one stitching the fabric of the world back together while the rest of us sleep. To the artist, keep singing, painting, writing, dancing. You are the immune system's imagination. You show us what we could be when we stop being what we were told to be. To the organizers, keep building. The revolution is not a single dramatic moment. It is the accumulation of a million small refusals to accept the unacceptable. To the faithful, pray. Yes, pray, but let your prayer have feet. Let your devotion have hands. The divine does not need our worship as much as our neighbors need our water, our shelter, our advocacy, and our presence. The violence stops when we stop feeding it. Stop feeding it with your silence when bigotry speaks at the dinner table. Stop feeding it with your consumption when the exploitation is the business model. Stop feeding it with your vote when the candidate offers only cruelty and a tailored suit. Stop feeding it with your attention when the algorithm profits from your outrage. Stop feeding it with your despair when hope is the last revolutionary act. We are not required to complete the work of repair, but neither are we free to abandon it. The world we want is not a fantasy. It is a memory of what we were before colonization, before enslavement, before the great severing. It lives in the songs we still sing, the recipes we still cook, the stories we still tell, and the way we still gather when the world tries to isolate us. Stop the violence, start the healing, build the world, heal the world. Not someday, not when they give us permission, not when all the stars align. Now, right now, with every breath, Every choice, every act of courage that looks small but shifts the axis of the earth just slightly toward justice. This is the message. This is the resurrected message. This is the work. This is the way. Ashe.